How do you feel when someone forces you to do things their way? You'd probably feel pretty bad, as it's a really annoying situation. But what if you were that person? Today, I bring you the episode of Adventure Time called Another Way, which talks exactly about these two feelings, where Finn becomes a jerk and makes life hell for those around him. So if you're interested, why not leaving a like? Sit down, straighten up, and enjoy. The episode starts with Finn and Jake inside their house, but they're not alone. There are a bunch of medical clowns there theoretically to help them recover from a foot injury they both had. But in practice, they're just making the atmosphere even weirder. Finn starts feeling uncomfortable and asks Jake to get rid of them because it's a really ridiculous and uncomfortable situation to be in, but Jake refuses to send them away and says at least now they know not to jump off birds, justifying why their legs are injured. Jake says they won't leave until the job is completely done, and he even squeezes her nose until she makes a strange sound and lets out some orange farts. Besides having a sinister appearance, these clowns seem to have come straight from hell. I remember when I was a kid, because of my fear of clowns, anything that even remotely suggested the idea of a clown that wasn't very caricatured scared me. But with these clowns, I was just filled with pure hatred. Look, the clown that was with Finn suddenly starts kissing Finn's foot, and when he gets uncomfortable with the situation, she says that's the only way to heal his boo-boo. But anyway, Jake is actually enjoying the situation, showing himself to be quite relaxed and even enjoying the kisses. But Finn still finds it disgusting and continues reading his book, and the page he was reading talked about a magical Cyclops whose tears can heal any wound. Suddenly, Finn becomes interested in going in search of this Cyclops, but the doctor insists that she is the only solution Finn has. She calls other doctors who grab Finn and forcibly kiss his wound, and at this point we see the doctor going completely against many ethical rules regarding morality. But we'll come back to this later. Finn sinks further and further into his own thoughts and feels perhaps suffocated by the presence of the doctors, and we see him going to this world where they continue to whisper that that was the only way. Finn wakes up, and there were the doctors, kissing his toe. Finn gets angry again, and goes into the forest probably in search of the Cyclops. In the middle of the journey, he meets a talking log that gives him two options. One would be a path that would leave him bald forever, and the other would leave him stinky for the rest of his life. Much like those "what do you prefer" questions your friends probably ask you.
Save an unknown child or play GTA 6 early?
But now theoretically it's real life, therefore not having another option or maybe just going back. Upon hearing this, Finn remembers that clown from earlier that did not give him another option, so he attacks the log and decides to go through the middle where he comes across a talking bush that talks a lot of crap, leaving Finn even more confused. He just says he wants to get to the other side, but the bush says it's impossible. The river water was aggressive, acidic, and extremely corrosive. There was a bridge, but it wasn't even an option, and to top it off, there were electric eels in that river. This time Finn didn't even have an option. The bush said it was impossible and going back was the only thing he could do. Finn remembers the clowns again and becomes thirsty to deny what others thought was best, so he tears the bush out of the ground and acts like Moses, separating the water from the river, thus creating a path for himself to pass through. After finishing off the little bush, they weren't even halfway there, and the bush says they should turn back. Finn goes crazy with ideas again and simply throws what's left of the bush and tries to do the same with himself, but it didn't work out so well. And still he managed to cross the river. After that, he comes across this little being who asks Finn, being tall, to grab the wheel that was on top of a tree, and for some reason, Finn thought it would be a good idea to grab the wagon with the melons and just throw them towards the dwarf's wife. These melons not only spoiled their house but also hit the lady. The dwarf asks Finn to leave, and for the first time in the episode, Finn feels bad for what he did. He goes away and starts singing a song, which is really bad by the way, but the song is about how he admits he was wrong and that listening to both his brain and instincts made him insane. Admitting he went too far, and here I go back to talking about ethics and morality. In philosophy, there are something called ethical theories, which are basically ways of determining what is right and wrong. There we can find egoism and utilitarianism, which are essentially opposite ideas. One defends that we should do what favors the majority of people, while the other defends that the right choice is the one that benefits the one making the decision. Up until this point in the episode, Finn showed a very egoist vision, believing that the right thing to do is always what aligns towards his goals without even thinking minimally about others. Many times, this thinking also brings, even if minimally, a negationist view, which basically consists of denying any fact that goes against a pre-established thesis, trying to prove a point that is vulnerable, because if it were true, you wouldn't need to deny anything. This is quite common in scientific debates, like in the case of flat Earth, where people deny the existence of gravity just to support their argument, but that's not relevant to us. The point is that in Finn's case, he wanted so much to prove that there were other ways to do things, and that he didn't need to be in that embarrassing situation with the doctors, that in this case it was to seek the Cyclops' tears, that he forgot what was more important. He wanted so much to achieve his goal that he wouldn't care about what or who was in the way between him and those tears. Adding to the fact that he didn't want to accept the rules imposed by others, we realize that maybe Finn's problem wasn't necessarily the lack of options presented to him, but he just didn't want anyone to tell him what to do. His pride wouldn't let him follow rules imposed by others, even though he might agree, and I can understand him being upset with the clowns, but the log, the bush, and the dwarf couple didn't do anything to him, especially the dwarf. He just asked him a favor, and instead of simply refusing or accepting since it wouldn't cost anything, but Finn, obsessed with this idea of showing that he doesn't follow anyone's rules, ended up messing everything all due to childishness and stubbornness. His actions not only interfered negatively in his life, but also in the lives of 4 other individuals, and again, all this just to show that he didn't need the doctors. Needless to say, Finn was wrong, and in fact he himself realizes it, and it's at this moment that the Cyclops appears to Finn. Done with the philosophy. He says that he knows his intentions and he will not come out victorious because the being never cries. Finn denies all of this, and says that after all those events he just wants to go home, but the Cyclops still convinced that Finn only wanted the tears, and he thinks that all of that was a strategy to make him feel bad and then letting a tear fall. Finn gets even more uncomfortable and says for the Cyclops to take things his way, and the Cyclops simply punches our dear friend. He's all broken while the Cyclops says he must beg for forgiveness, but Finn comes up with a strategy to punch his eyes, making him shed tears. This ends up curing Finn, who decides to rip off the Cyclops' head and fix the problems he had caused earlier, and returning home, where he finds Jake still quite calm and gives the head to the doctors, making them kiss it. He offers the tears to Jake, but he refuses, saying he would still prefer the kisses, and when Finn says he was gross, Jake retorts saying that we all have our own ways of doing things. This shocks Finn and opens his eyes to something bigger. He thanks Jake, and just like that, the episode ends. In this episode, Finn was a complete jerk, and now that I think about it, maybe the doctors didn't even intend to disturb Finn, but that's what generated this great episode. Thank you very much for everything, and before you go, I made a video about One Piece recently, and it was really funny to do. It took a lot of work, so why not take a look? Thank you very much for everything, and until next time.